right, and it looks like we are good to go with our streaming as well. Welcome everybody to our fourth and final webinar in the series of 4 that we've done for really the first part of the school year and towards the end of the year. This webinar series has been put on by the Autism Interagency work group, and we have representatives from Department of Human Services, Education, Economic Development, University of Minnesota, Metro XU. We have been collaborating with all of our partners to put on this series. So for today's webinar, this is in the Zoom webinar format. So you're not able to, as a participant, unmute or use your video. But what you can do if you have questions is put them in the chat as well as the Q&A. You can use either of those formats, and our presenters would like to take time at the end to answer questions. So if you want to keep the questions coming in, that's just fine, and we will take time at the end to answer those questions. So I want to thank everybody, all of our panelists, for being here today, and take it away.
Great, thanks, Erin. So as Erin said, this is our fourth and final in our webinar series. So this is the next stage pathway to transition and long-term services and supports. So I'm Nicole Burning. I work for the Minnesota Department of Human Services as the Autism Clinical Lead, and I will let the other panelists introduce themselves. So Lindsay, if you would like to go first.
Thank you, Nicole. Good morning. I am Lindsay Horowitz, and I'm the Post-Secondary Transition Specialist with Minnesota Department of Education. Thank you.
We'll just keep going. Hi, everybody. My name is Alyssa Klein. I'm with the Department of Employment and Economic Development, and within that department is our agency, which is Vocational Rehabilitation Services. My role is to help coordinate all of our services to high school students. So nice to meet all of you. Well, sort of meet all of you.
Great, and good morning, everyone. My name's Ryan Mers. I'm our employment coordinator at the Disability Services Division at the Minnesota Department of Human Services. So my work is around our waiver employment services, as well as fulfilling our state's employment first policy to make sure that all people with disabilities have opportunities to participate in competitive integrated employment.
Hello, I'm Wendy Burkhorst. I am with the Minnesota Department of Health, Children and Youth with Special Health Needs, Coordinated Care Systems Specialist, Transition Interagency work, also reassigned to COVID, working with the community engagement group. So welcome, and I appreciate that you're here with us today.
Great, thanks everybody. So yes, we work together as an interagency team just to be making sure that all of our systems are working together to really support children, youth, and young adults, and making sure that their families and the students have what they need. So making sure that our systems are coordinated and that we're collaborating and getting all of the services across the board. So we'll be going through these 4 main topic areas today. So we'll be taking you through kind of the school and IEP services, vocational rehabilitation services, county tribal employment supports, and then also talking about considering your healthcare needs throughout this entire process as you're planning for transition services. So to get started, we just wanted to really reiterate that there really is, it's never too early to start thinking about planning for the child's transition. So even as, you know, a lot of children with autism are going through special education services or within an early intervention program, and even at home, as you're supporting your child, that you're thinking about exploring those interests, their special interests, and thinking about how that could maybe be turned into a job at some point. Really emphasizing their skills that they may need in employment or in independent living later on. Really emphasizing and building upon those skills as they're growing up. really emphasizing the developments of those self-care skills that they're going to be able to need later on as they transition to potential independent living situations, gaining those job skills, working on problem solving, building up that communication, really so that they are able to implement those different skills in different settings, just to be making them the most successful with this transition. Other areas and topics, things like managing money, helping to pay bills, really to be presenting them with more choices, really to just be making that ability for them to feel empowered to advocate for their own support. So that's what we'll be talking about today. Other things always are helpful, helping them to learn about transportation options that they might need to access employment or once they're out in the community. So working on those independent skills there as well. And then learning what supports that they need to be successful, both in their education setting and maybe in a future employment setting, and how they can help to advocate for themselves for those needs as well, when they may not always have a parent or caregiver present with them in the future. We've also developed some new resources that really help to kind of combine all of these different services and supports that an individual may be accessing throughout their lifespan. So as we've gone through the webinar series, you've heard a lot of us talk about the medical diagnosis, the educational determination and supports, those early intervention services. And now today, you'll see us kind of concentrate on that last section, the transition and employment support. And then we also have the next stage document, which will really bring together a lot of the different topics that our panelists will be talking about today. So we encourage you to access this. It's an eDoc on the DHS website. You can also find it on the Minnesota Autism Resource Portal. And then this can just be a great resource to sit down with families and go through the different types of supports, just making sure that you are accessing everything that you need and are on track. And that is translated into Hmong, Somali, and Spanish as well. So as I said, we'll start with the school and the IEP team and how transition planning starts usually around age 14 within the high school setting, and then talking about the vocational rehab services. And then we'll go into the county and tribal supports and what you can access through a Min Choices assessment and support plan. And then Wendy will finish us off with those other healthcare needs. So I will turn it over to Lindsay to get started.
Thank you, Nicole. So as I said, I'm Lindsay Horowitz, and I'm with the Minnesota Department of Education as the Post-Secondary Transition Specialist. We can go to the next slide. So this is just, I don't know if we can click to get it all on the screen, but this is just the actual definition of transition. And so when you think of transition, just kind of what comes to mind for you. You can feel free to put it in the chat of just thinking of what do you think when you hear transition? And as you're putting them in there, just to the actual definition of it's really that movement, that development or evolution from one form of stage to another. So I see change. Yes, absolutely. It is a change. And how do we make that change as positive and as seamless and purposeful and meaningful as we can for our youth? Slowly moving forward, absolutely. So thank you. These are definitely things that we want to think about when we are transitioning our youth to the next stage of their life. You can go to the next slide. And then here's our official definition of transition. So really, it's that coordinated set of activities for a child with a disability that is designed to be within results of an oriented process that's focusing on that, improving that academic and functional achievement of the child with a disability to facilitate that transition and movement from school to post-school. And I saw get out of my parents' home. Definitely, if that is a goal, we want to help facilitate that. And so moving from post-school activities, including post-secondary education, vocational education, integrated employment, and then also including supported employment, continuing into your adult life, adult services, independent living, and or community participation. And then on the next slide, we have, thank you. this still continuing of the definition and really making sure that we're basing it on the individual child, youth's needs. So taking into account their strengths, their preferences, interests, and including, but not limited to, so the instruction, their related services, what they're getting in school that is on their IEP, community experiences, and then that development of employment and other post-school adult living, and really doing that in a collaborative manner. And then where appropriate, those daily living and functional skills as well. And I can't stress enough about doing all of that together. And that's why obviously we're all here together as other state agencies presenting together, but that collaborative model, as many of you know, really is when you get the best outcome for your child or youth. So then with that transition policy and practice, so knowing that our transition age really is from that 9th grade through 12th grade, but
maybe I can jump in, being that Lindsay froze. This is Alyssa Klein. I know with this slide, because we've presented in other events. So again, I think what she was saying was transition age. When you're in school, transition starts at grade 9 when you have an IEP through when you graduate, which could be up through age 21. And then as a part of your IEP during that age, besides, IEPs before grade 9 have certain components, and now you add in transition age activities and services so that you're thinking about starting at grade 9, how can we help the student get all the skills that they need so that they can effectively transition from school to what happens next. And I think she might be back.
I'm so sorry.
Nope, it's okay, Lindsay. I did my best to punt for you, and now we're on the next slide if you want to take it.
Okay, great. Thank you, I appreciate it. So with post-secondary education planning, here are some options that you can have. So we can obviously have our post-secondary education could be a 4-year college, could be a trade or technical school, internship, apprenticeship, or any other learning opportunity, making sure that it is really interest and skills and what is going to provide that purpose and meaning for that youth. And then and ensuring that there's accommodations available. So you might still be using a 504 plan. If you're going to choose a post-secondary option of a college, when you're touring, you could ask to meet with the disability coordinator. Then also, you could also review this post-secondary resource guide, which could include practical learning strategies. And this also in that post-secondary resource guide gives a nice transition and kind of shows you over time of what you could do. There's information on self-advocacy, paying for college, and accommodations, and much more in that guide. But I guess what I can't stress enough is really starting that planning early, and not just starting that planning early on your own, but really that collaborative manner of planning early. So including school, including county if appropriate, including VRS if needed, including health, everything that would impact, think of you as an individual, what impacts you in your life, including all those needs for your youth. And then we can go to our next slide. And this I want to draw our attention to of really that person-centered planning and knowing that we want to plan the best life that we can possibly plan. And if going to any of the Charting the Life course tools are amazing. I'm sure many of you on here today have used the Charting the Life course materials, but really it allows you, so in the right-hand side here, we have charting the life trajectory. And so it allows you to decide what don't I want as an individual, and then kind of plan from there of where do I want to end up. And there's some just really nice, easy, self-explanatory tools that are immediately at your access, and you can use them in any avenue of your life. And I highly recommend it. So I'm going to turn it over to Alyssa.
Hi, everybody. Again, Alyssa Klein from Vocational Rehabilitation Services. And Lindsay talked, she didn't say as much about employment because coming up next is VRS and, you know, how we work with schools to work on employment related goals and skills. And one thing I'll say is that what we have the goal, you know, it's a part of what's called Employment First in our state and around the country, is Employment First being the first option that we hope that every young person with a disability and every adult is competitive integrated employment, which is a job in the community, just like anybody else, where you can earn minimum wage or the prevailing wage, whatever anybody else makes, you can earn the same benefits as anyone, etc. That's our goal, is to help all young people achieve that. So here we are with Vocational Rehabilitation Services as an interagency partner, helping to support it. So we're a state agency, a part of DEED, Department of Employment and Economic Development. We're also a partner in the Career Force system. So there are 50 Career Force centers around the state, and it's a hub to help both individuals that are job seekers as well as employers to get resources and assistance. So there's all kinds of different partners a part of that system, and we are one of those. And it's also important to know that we serve both high school students as well as adults at any age. And that's really important too, because sometimes younger people might say, I think I've got this on my own. I don't know if I need help now while they're in high school. And of course, we want young people to be as independent as possible. And so, they can certainly make that choice. But if in the future, say after they graduate, they realize maybe I do need more help, we're always here for them to come to. So, and also, I think it's good as family members because sometimes you yourself or somebody might need some extra assistance, and our agency is here to help that broad population. Okay. So the services that we provide, this is just a very high level overview, but kind of the larger buckets, so to speak, of the services VRS provides. So number one is career counseling. So working one-on-one with individuals as well as their, in the case of high school students, that could be their IEP team, to help think about the future and that career counseling, just, how to start exploring and what kind of needs do you have and what's important to you. Job training support. So thinking about after high school, and Lindsay did address that during her time talking about post-secondary education. And as she said, it doesn't necessarily always have to mean a 4-year degree. It could be a 2-year program. It could be apprenticeship. There's even other short-term training options that we can help explore. So 70% of all jobs require some form of post-secondary education. So we want those with individuals with disabilities that we serve to also have that opportunity to explore those options. So job placement is help with finding a job. So everything that goes into that whole process, from getting a resume together to applying for jobs and practice interviewing, etc. And then services to keep a job. So, it could include something like job coaching, where an individual gets a job and they need some extra help on the job. It could be supports outside of the work day, because some people may not want to disclose to their employer. They might not need to disclose to their employer that they have a disability and they have extra supports. And so we might help kind of outside the work day. And it could be other things like looking at assistive technology. What kind of innovative ideas can we help support a person so that they can be successful on the job? And then pre-employment transition services relates directly to what we're talking about today. So I'm going to talk about that on the next slide, and we can go there next. So pre-employment transition services, otherwise known as pre-ETs, are these 5 activities listed on this slide. we have a new, somewhat new federal law that came out in 2014. It still feels pretty new because we're still, frankly, implementing it, because when you get a whole new set of services, which PreEts is all new, it takes a while for the whole system to figure out how we work together to provide them. So it's really actually very exciting because it calls out more services than our program provided in the past. And we have to have these 5 services available statewide to all students in transition, ages 14 through 21 that are in school. And it doesn't mean we serve every student, but we have them available. And so I'll just go through those real quickly. The first, and they're all pretty self-explanatory, but you can see these 5 services were called out in our federal law because really these are really 5 essential components for every young person, whether you have a disability or not, to be thinking about in terms of where am I at now in high school and where do I want to be in the future. Number 1, job exploration. So what are the different options out there? What are my interests and what are my strengths and how do they match up with all those options out there in the world? That can be overwhelming. And so our role, again, in collaboration with high schools, is to help students, learn about those different things and feel like they have good information in order to make a decision on where they want to head. Number 2, work-based learning. I'll tell you this, one of the, research has been done on what will help young people with disabilities be successful after high school. And one of the number 1 things is having a paid job while you are in high school. So I can tell you this from a personal level. I have 2 young children. Well, they're not young anymore. So it depends on your perspective, I guess. 18 and 20 actually, but both of them, I can't say enough how work has impacted their lives when maybe they're struggling with school, maybe struggling with a lot of different things, but having that paid job made all the difference for them. I think it makes all the difference for every young person when they can fit it into their life. But work-based learning doesn't even have to just be a paid job, although that's like the ultimate thing we'd like to see. It can also include things like job shadowing. So being able to see people working and ask them questions, or even just a tour of a business. It can mean a lot of different things like that, but just having that more hands-on experience to make those decisions. And during COVID, how can we be more creative? I know there's a lot of discussion happening right now is how we can do creative things, even if we can't get physically into a business. How could we do that virtually? Number 3, post-secondary education counseling. So again, looking at options for after high school, for getting, whether it be, some sort of post-secondary education program or training. Workplace readiness training are the skills not only to find a job. So how can I do this on my own? How can I learn how to fill out job applications and do a resume? But also, what are the skills to keep a job? So all those, what we call soft skills, like teamwork and communication and, anything that's going to relate to getting along with others and being able to keep a job. And last but not least is instruction in self-advocacy. How can I learn how to speak up for myself? How can I understand my disability and be able to tell others, what I need based on my disability? Okay, move forward. So if you have a young person that's interested in VRS, might need some extra supports, there are 2 ways to connect with our program. If they're in high school, we have staff assigned to every high school in the state, and this link on here will take you directly to the page where you can find the staff, and you could just contact them directly and say, I'm interested in VRS. And they'll meet with that young person. Ideally, if there's a team, it's nice to have, like, say, if it's a school case manager or a parent, it's always nice to talk with students together. It could be a county case manager too, whoever's supporting them. So we can start from the very get-go talking about how we're going to work together to support this young person. If they're not in school, so I say adults as kind of the bigger category. Not in school, you can contact the office nearest to where you live. Again, we're part of that Career Force Center, but you can click on this link and find the office nearest you. You can also email me. My email was listed at the beginning of my slides here. I'm happy to help navigate that. So I think this is my last slide. We have some new fun resources available. So if you're wanting to explain who VRS is to a young person after today, we have a video that's 3 minutes long, so it's not very long. That's new this fall, so explains our services and how to get in touch with us. We also have a new flyer, and then our website has been updated as well. So you can go to those places to find out more. I think that's it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lindsay. And I'm next up to help talk about our county and tribal supports. And again, my name is Ryan Mers. I'm our employment coordinator for the Disability Services Division at the Department of Human Services. All right, so I've got a couple quick slides here on how you should think about like waiver or county and tribal supports as you're working with transition age youth or with your son or daughter. So for this first one is on determining eligibility and healthcare coverage options. Almost all services and supports will have eligibility requirements, and many have a cost involved. For instance, educational services require an educational determination. Other services will require a medical diagnosis. Some of these services have a substantial financial cost, and many families access healthcare coverage to help cover the cost. Some private insurance companies will cover the cost of these therapy services. If your insurance does not cover the cost, there are options to apply for medical assistance or MA in order to gain access to these essential services. You can visit the MNsure.org website listed here on the slides. This website is a marketplace where you can apply for Minnesota healthcare insurance plans and also find out if you meet the requirements for Minnesota's healthcare programs. If your income is too high, there might be options to pay a monthly parent fee and access MA through the TEFRA option, also linked here. Schedule an appointment with your child's primary medical doctor to discuss your concerns and begin the process of referrals. Depending on your insurance, you might be able to receive direct referrals for speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and other services and supports. You can call your healthcare plan member services to get started. The contact information for your health plan is typically found on the back of your health plan member card. If you have questions about eligibility, contact your local county agency or tribe where your child resides. You can call your health plan's member services, or you can contact the Minnesota Healthcare Program's member help desk through those links on the slides. And then case management services can help people with developmental disabilities and mental health conditions and their families get the help that they need. Case managers assess a person's needs and help connect the person and family to their appropriate community resources. So that's just some information on determining that eligibility. And then now a slide on some important considerations for maintaining eligibility for transition age students. So at age 18, Social Security income, or SSI, is no longer determined using the parent's income. So it's now going to be, that eligibility is going to be moved over to the young adult here, and they will need to reapply. So whether they're accessing waiver services or not, this is an important step in maintaining that eligibility. Additionally, this is a good time to start thinking about what's known as MAEPD, or Medical Assistance for Employed Persons with Disabilities. So this is sort of an incentive program, but people with disabilities who work can continue to get coverage under this MAEPD program. So, sometimes people incorrectly think like, oh, I'm on medical assistance, I can't work right now, so it'll impact my benefits. There's a lot of incentive programs that have employment and benefits working together. So MAEPD is a great option to look into. And then you can also you may also look into MADX. And then as a final bullet here, there's some on-demand webinars on healthcare coverage. So that's an important consideration as you look at maintaining eligibility for transition age young adults. All right, So as part of those MA or waiver services, there's a lot of different long-term supports that Minnesota's home and community-based waiver programs offer. And one important consideration of those is our employment services. So first of all, if you think that you could benefit from home and community-based waiver services, you can request a MnChoices assessment and a support plan that can help get you started. So basically, that MnChoices assessment is a way that we help determine eligibility and look at different programs and support. So if you think you can benefit, starting with a MnChoices assessment and contacting your local county or tribal agency is a great way to get started. Secondly, if you're already receiving HCBS waiver services, you can talk to your case manager about available employment services. And I'm going to go over those in the next slide in a little bit more detail. An important consideration for all of our waiver supports is that Minnesota is an employment first state. And kind of in essence, this means that we're committed to ensuring that people with disabilities have opportunities and support to work in competitive integrated employment. So sort of the first and preferred outcome as we look at how our employment related supports help a person is that it results in competitive integrated employment or a job just like anyone else. Finally, in this last bullet here, there's resources on transition to adulthood for families and also information on work options for individuals at the Disability Hub MN website. So those are two hyperlinks in the slide, and I know we'll send the PowerPoints out following this presentation, but that's a great website, especially for support professionals as you're helping someone navigate those transitions, to go take a look and see what different options are. For families and for individuals, they can also navigate that themselves, or if you're a family here, you can take a look and you'll see just different resources available that can help with that transition. So I'll transition over to the next slide. Under our waiver services, we have waiver employment supports, and these supports help people at all stages of their pathway to employment and ensure a personally meaningful career. These are a really great resource as you're looking at transition to adulthood, and as you're looking at where as I go into the work world or into adult life and out of school, what's available to help me. So on the waiver side, we typically talk about our employment services in terms of exploration, development, and support. So waiver services can help you explore the world of work, learn about interests, and kind of decide what you want to pursue in employment, and if you want to pursue competitive employment. Development services can help you plan out your path to employment and can also assist with a job search. For example, if VRS or those services that Alyssa was indicating weren't available, that's where those waiver services would come in. And then finally, support services are ongoing supports to maintain employment. So like job coaching and those sort of supports. But as a student leaves school and they enter adulthood, employment supports continue to be available. And on the waiver end, there's supports that help people keep a job long-term, as well as explore what they want to do in work. And then finally, a lot of people access day training and rehabilitation or day support services, what's just known as day services under waiver supports, to build personally meaningful activities and help people engage in community activities and kind of build out that meaningful life around work. And it's really important to look at employment services and these day services as components that can work together. So it's not really a choice of either or, but to understand that these day services can help wrap around someone's employment or employment supports and help kind of build out that meaningful life as they move forward. So that's an overview of our waiver employment supports. And I think I'll do next slides. I think I hand it over to Wendy here.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm Wendy Burkhorst, and I am a public health nurse with the Minnesota Department of Health, coming to you talking about sort of coordinated care system specialists and how health really is not a mandated service or a lot of rules and regs of like what you have for VRS or education, things like that. But it really is the groundwork, the foundation for having positive outcomes in no matter what we do. So let's move forward. So when we think about health, we want everyone, all of us, to be responsible, to know how to learn to take care of ourselves and be as independent as possible. And when you have a diagnosis or a chronic condition or a complex medical condition, it takes time and it takes a planned process to really gain the knowledge and skills to sustain health and wellness. So there's a lot of education to that. And I think the illustration on the right here just shows that health and well-being is a lifelong goal for all of us. And we need to, sometimes we forget, and look at how our lives now have been impacted by COVID, a public health crisis, and how we have had to cope and change our processes of how we live and work. So go ahead. So when we think about health with kids on this autism spectrum, we want to know, what do they have a health condition that does or could interfere with their daily life and learning? And just because there is a medical diagnosis doesn't always mean that there's an IEP. A child could have a 504 or an IHP, an individual health plan. And part of with health too is, how are they impacted? How is it impacting the daily life, the learning, but how does it change from year to year too? Next slide. So many times people have more than one diagnosis. And I think that many, when you look, here's a common list of diagnoses and whether they have, someone has autism and has asthma or diabetes or having mental health things, it's really looking at the continuum and looking at the whole person and what are their needs and having a better understanding of the health and well-being. Go ahead. So where do you get health information? I know that the county case managers, having seen some of their work, do a great job of sort of reporting if there's medical diagnoses and do they have a primary care doctor. Within the education system, many times there's a summary and part of your educational assessment and plan, sort of what's the current health status, what's current health history, and then what's been going on in the past. Is there any known chronic or urgent health conditions? What's the latest updates for taking medication or treatments? Are they getting private occupational therapy and school occupational therapy? What's the latest on vision and hearing? And then any even significant illnesses or hospitalizations that have occurred. And then another place to look would be any sports physicals and other reports, and looking at attendance. If they miss, I suppose with at-home learning, it's a little different. But anyways, if you miss a lot of school or having a lot of health issues. Go ahead. So as many of you probably are aware, school health services differ per school district. Some school districts have a licensed school nurse assigned in a lot of different assignments or different schools and programs. Some have one for the whole district and have aides in some of the different areas. But I think it's really critical. I just want to take this time just to make sure that that like this fall, that everyone has current contact information, understands if there's been any updates in child's medical health status, and knowing what current medicine and treatments kids are on. So, because a lot of times I'm sure the kids on your caseload are being seen, or families have multiple providers at different clinics through different systems and have different insurances and different hospitals for different programs. Go ahead. One of the things that school nurses or school health do a great job of summarizing sort of the health and critical health status and needs. But a lot of times there is an importance to do a transition readiness assessment. And key thing with healthcare is the planned, organized, moving from pediatric care to adult care. And guidetransitions.org has a 7-question online survey that anyone could do to help identify where the student is at and looking at how you could relate their needs and their strengths, preferences, and interests into their overall planning. Go ahead. So part of it is we want kids with disabilities, special healthcare needs to manage their own health, to be able to do the best that they can. And that is going to be different. It's complex. It depends on the disability, the child's cognitive, their communication skills, family priorities, cultural background. Part of it is learning how to talk with their healthcare providers. When you go from pediatric to adult care, a lot of times the parents have been the key advocate and supporting the family and saying, well, the child's got this and this and this. But part of it is having the child start to learn how to talk about their own health, how to ask questions. And then a critical component is finding a new doctor. If you're in the pediatric care system, then you need adult providers. If you have specialists that are pediatric specialists, finding adult specialists. So that takes time. It takes planning. It takes insurance coverage, personality match, convenience. There's so many different parts to that. And part of it is we've been working on trying to support healthcare providers and clinics on how to do an organized approach to transition planning. Now, some other skills for the student: make and cancel medical appointments. Do they know who their doctor is, how to get a hold of them? What's an emergency? What if they start bleeding or have a seizure? What do they do? Do they know what their medicines are, the side effects? Carry and use health insurance. And then even as Alyssa commented earlier, like, what do you share about your disability and what accommodations do you need? Go ahead. So some IEP annual goals, or putting in case manager goals too, but it's just like supporting the student to know more about their own health, medical needs, disability. We start having the discussion about providing healthcare. That's a lot of to switch providers. If you have an internal med, here's my plug, internal med peds is a new program, or there's doctors like that in the community, but they see the continuum. You don't have to transition per se. So sometimes that might be helpful. But if you have a family, or if you have a family doctor too, I mean, they see adults, so you don't have to transition, but then you still need to be transitioning more to adult care. Does the child or youth have time alone with the doctor? Do they understand how to give their insurance card? So starting to make decisions, because at 18, no matter what, parents there's a difference in access to medical records and who's making decisions. Students have to give permission to their parents to get information. So bottom line, we wanted to build confidence and self-advocacy skills for all. Next. Oh, this is just an example of some sample annual IEP goals. And this is actually off of the guidetransition.org website. But just to help think about, and that's my little plug, is to continue to monitor and think about how health is impacted and how can we really look at the care and well-being and looking at self-care needs of all of our students. Go ahead. Okay. I think this is Nicole. Thank you.
Yeah, so we just wanted to share some of the resources that are available, especially during this time during COVID-19. So we just have a number of different links and resources across the different state agencies and also some of our community partners as well, like ARC and PACER and the Disability Law Center, that have just gathered together a lot of great resources and tools for you to review during this time. And here's some from the Department of Education as well. I know we have a lot of questions, so I'll kind of go through some of these last few slides here pretty quick, but just so you're aware that, you know, also reaching out to a number of those community organizations, Family Voices of Minnesota has a great transition toolkit online that can help walk you through the process. The Autism Society of Minnesota always has great different skill shops, support groups. They, you know, in times of not COVID, they do a lot of great camps and opportunities for youth and young adults to come together. And they just have a lot of great information and resources on their website. And I know a lot of them are available via, you know, a virtual format during this time as well. And just be thinking about how those advocacy organizations can help support you during this time of transition. And just looking towards some of those community supports within the Autism Resource Portal. So thinking about activities, engaging in your community, finding recreation opportunities, and again, how you're able to advocate for any supports that you might need in those environments as well. But we just have a number of different options and ideas for more of the recreation, leisure, community participation. And also accessing that MnChoices assessment and support plan can help identify some of those options for you as well. And we just wanted you to also check out the Disability Hub Minnesota. Recently relaunched with a kind of a new redesign, and so things are a little bit easier to find. And this is where you'll see a lot of information on the housing, employment, the life course planning tools that we shared. They're also available on Facebook, so if you want to be, you know, up to date with a lot of the new information and resources as they become available, that's a great place to follow as well. And then just so everyone knows, they also have chat features every day. You know, 8 to 4, you can talk with a specialist, give them a call, and they can help answer any of your questions, especially around a lot of your eligibility, how that's maybe transitioning as your child's getting older. They're a great resource, a great place to start with for those questions. And then Direct Support Connect. So if you're looking for a job as a direct support worker or looking to hire a direct support worker, it's a great place to find those options. And then we just always remind you of the Minnesota Autism Resource Portal, where we do collect all of this information and have it kind of in one place for you. So that brings us to our questions. So I'll just read them off, and then whoever would be best to answer them, please feel free to just jump in with it. So I'll go back to the beginning here. We had what changes will take effect in the 245D program regarding personal support with the implementation of the Waiver Reimagined streamlining? I don't know,
So
Ryan. Yeah,
yep.
perfect.
This is Ryan. I'll feel part of it, and then feel free anyone else to jump in, Nicole, maybe if you've got any other thoughts here. But like for Waiver Reimagined, so in January of 2021, so this coming January, Waiver Reimagined is going to be streamlining some services, or streamlining and simplifying services across Minnesota's disability waiver programs like DD, CADI, CACDI. Sorry to throw out some acronyms, but streamlining those services. So there's a Waiver Reimagined website. There's a lot of changes involved there. There's a Waiver Reimagined website. That's a great place to go to kind of to get information, both at a high level and then more specific around what services are changing. I think from a broad scope, things to be aware of is, one, the waiver programs are going to start to look more similar across them, so that we've got similar services in the different waiver programs to set the stage for future changes in later years to kind of to move to 2 waivers in Minnesota and not the 4 disability waivers that we have. So some of it's just like administrative changes on the back end. And then secondly, An important thing to be aware of is pre-vocational services is going to be time limited moving forward. So a lot of that like center-based work stuff will be time limited. That's an important consideration around the transition age to be aware of. But I'll see if we can throw it in the chat here. That Waiver Reimagined site is really a good way to get the best information. A little bit, be kind of hard to cover in the short time we got here.
Perfect. So the next one is for VRS. Do you have or will VRS be developing a self-advocacy program to assure all pertinent topics are addressed? I understand this will be different for each person, but a checklist or something to assure all topics are addressed with the person would be helpful.
That's a great question. Actually, a resource we just developed, and we don't even have it online yet. So maybe I can work with Nicole and Aaron, whoever will be sending out information. We do have a new document that's called the PreEts framework. And so it goes through the 5 areas of pre-employment transition services, with instruction and self-advocacy being the 5th on that list. And we do have certain outcomes that you could see from engaging in that service. So, you know, by no means can you ever have a full all-encompassing list of every possible, like in this case, self-advocacy type skill that a person could have, but we at least did our best to say what are some of the primary things that we'd like to see. So yes, we have something, and I'll make sure that you all get access to that.
And then there's a question, what services are available for kids who are on the severe end of the spectrum and have a challenging behavioral needs?
Okay, well, that's kind of a broader question, but I will say this, and then others like Ryan and Lindsay and others could jump in. Again, we still have that vision that every young person should have every opportunity for competitive integrated employment. And sometimes if there are young people and adults that may have more significant needs, and it might, you know, there might be some barriers in the way at times, but we're committed to trying different, you know, avenues for helping people gain employment and for maintaining employment. That should never be a deterrent in applying for vocational rehabilitation services or for having that vision of employment in the future. It's not the question in the past, to be honest, before, you know, our employment first becoming kind of, as Ryan described it as well, as being that we have this vision of employment in the community as being that first option. In the past, maybe we would say, try to make the decision about whether a person can work or not. And now the decision isn't so much that, it's more about how can we help a person work? So sometimes we have to be more creative. And so we really want to encourage that sort of expectation for all of us going forward. And maybe Ryan and Lindsay would have more to say on that.
I'll jump in real quick. I thought that was a great explanation, Alyssa, on that, and just that keeping that perspective of, you know, what do we need to do, and not looking at it as, oh, we've got significant disabilities, you can't work, but rather, how do we tailor our strategies and get around there? And I think that's especially where some of those VR continues to be available to help with that job search, and waiver supports can be there for those long-term supports to maintain employment. If you need some of that more, you know, career exploration, planning type services at that front end, that's really where those waiver exploration services in the front end can keep help building that out.
And I think just to jump in on addressing some of those behavioral needs, you know, through the waiver, there are some of those behavior supports. There's certainly programs like EIDPI that the child may qualify for, where the provider may be able to just help assist in managing some of those behavior needs first, and then, you know, being able to then transition the child to some of those other supports just to make them more successful. So keeping that in mind. And then are students required to go through VRS and their process before looking at sheltered employment?
So I mentioned that we have a new federal law that's maybe not so new, but still feels new, WIOA. And it did call out in WIOA that for a person to make less, like a person with a disability to earn a sub minimum wage, so earn less than the federal minimum wage, usually that, you know, if you're working within a DT&H, a more of a sheltered program, that is typically the way individuals are paid. In order, if you are age 24 or under, to be able to earn that sub minimum wage, it does require individuals to come to VRS first. And the reason being that, again, with Employment First being, you know, this is a national movement. We want young people to have every opportunity to work in the community and earn minimum wage or above first. So that's the idea with it. If somebody just, you know, is not, you know, so anyway, I can help you connect if you need some of that assistance with connecting with VRS about that. And we do provide paperwork that you can take to the DT&H that allows you to earn that sub minimum wage. But my hope is that, you know, there isn't just a streamlined go to DT&H. We want to help individuals, young people and their families and those that support them, you know, imagine what work could be like in the community first. And Ryan, is there anything more you'd want to say on that one?
Yeah, you know, again, Alyssa, I think you did a good job kind of setting it up where really our driving goal is around that competitive employment at a prevailing wage at the wages everyone else. Subminimum wage is there and it continues to be a tool that is there, but really, especially when you're looking at transition age students and as Lindsay kind of use those charting the life course tools to build out the life that you want and like where do you want to go long term is really making sure that we're setting up on the front end the steps we need to get there. And I think that's really where, as you're graduating from school or transitioning into adulthood, looking at kind of keeping that focus around competitive employment and thinking about like, all right, what are all the tools that we can use to get here, and engaging VR in that job search, engaging those exploration services. Those can all be great. And then, you know, DT&H or day services continue to be available to kind of wrap around support of that employment search. But especially when we're looking at sub-minimum wages, we want to be very attentive to make sure as support professionals for the lead agencies, especially on the webinar, just making sure that we're ensuring informed choice and that we've kind of gone through all of those requirements on our end.
And then I'm just going to try and kind of group a couple of questions together since we are running low on time. But just as far as like the DD waiver, you know, Ryan, can you verify that there really is no like expiration for that? If the person is on the DD waiver, they can continue with that. It's more around like if they were on a medical assistance, like a TEFRA option, then they may need to look at transitioning to a waiver support in order to maintain services. Is that kind of accurate there?
Yep. Thanks, Nicole. And I know I saw a question in the chat earlier on MADX and what did that mean? Sorry to throw confusing terms. It's just you can qualify for medical assistance based on a disability status or income. So those are just two different options that are there.
Yeah. So the DD waiver, you know, if he's 17 turning 18, then that should be fine. It's more again around like the MA TEFRA option if they had been on that before. So that should take care of that. And I saw the comment about the soft skills and just about how many students are not equipped with those as they're entering into employment. And I think that's something that we've heard really across the board from all students that soft skills could be emphasized a bit more. And then for Ryan, is that reapplication for SSI at 18 regardless of the guardianship status?
You know, Nicole, I would believe so, but I would be hesitant to give a firm answer on that one. I do believe it is regardless, but I would have to consult.
Yeah, and I think the best thing, you know, for specific situations or your specific, you know, status, just because there are so many different components and factors that go into this, you know, your best bet is either to talk with your case manager or to talk with the Disability Hub Minnesota about your options there, just because it is hard for us to kind of make sweeping generalizations about people's choices. And then what age does PreEnt start at? Was that 14, ninth grade, is that?
Yep, we can start as early as 14, 14 through age 21, and the individual just needs to, we just need to verify there's a disability and that they're in school. So 14 through 21.
Perfect. And could someone explain when you would go to VRS for employment support versus seeking out these employment waivers? Are the waivers for students with more significant barriers or needs to employment?
I'll jump in this. Alyssa, just hop back in if there's anything else. So yeah, it's a great question, and it's actually part of our agencies are doing a lot of work together right now to kind of coordinate and make sure that all of our employment services work together and kind of clarify how, when you go to each. So it's a really timely question. I think a very short answer is when you've got an adult, so a student that's transitioned out of school, VRS is really there for those job search support. It's like, hey, I want to go find competitive employment, and I need some help with that job search. That's where VR really shines and has the expertise. For the waiver services, like I said before, on the front end and helping people decide, do I want to pursue employment? What am I interested in? All those things. That's a great time for waiver exploration services and those waiver services at the front end. Additionally, once someone has competitive employment, waiver supports can provide the long-term supports like job coaching, negotiating with employers, all that kind of stuff. The long-term supports to maintain employment, waiver services are sort of the first go-to there, or VR doesn't offer those services. So waiver can help with those supports. But regardless of disabilities, or regardless of whether you're receiving waiver services or whether you otherwise have a disability, VR is kind of the go-to place for those job search services for adults. So that, I think that answers.
Perfect. I see we're at time, so if we didn't get your question, I apologize. We do have the ASD email inbox, and I can make sure that we, get that to anyone that would be the best person to answer that. So feel free to email us through that, and we will get the PowerPoint slides sent out to you, as well as all the previous webinars, so you have all of the links and information. So thank you everybody for joining us today, and thank you to all of our panelists for all of your expertise and sharing it with everyone. So thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.